All right, this is a 150-page document, transcript, trial testimony, Michael Anderson, day 6. There's 23 days of transcripts, and sometimes there's multiple files per day. So we're just slowly working our way through this, and you don't have to listen to these if you don't want to, but I want to become as familiar with this trial as I possibly can. This is case number 3:11-CR-00022-RJB, Fairbanks, Alaska, Tuesday, May 15th, 2012, 8:29 a.m., day 6. Anchorage, Alaska, Tuesday, May 15th, 2012. The court. Okay, let me ask you, stand in the jury box or in the witness stand, or in the witness box rather, and face a jury in the courtroom and raise your right hand to be sworn. Michael Anderson's plaintiff witness sworn. The witness, I do. The court. Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Scrocky. Your Honor, please be seated. Your Honor, before we begin with this witness, Mr. Anderson has counsel, and we've been advised he's on his way over. I think the schedule this morning, we thought it would go a little longer than we expected, so he's on his way. Would you like to wait? The witness. Okay. You would. Okay, we'll wait for him. Mr. Scrocky, thank you. The court. Is there anything else? The clerk. Judge, since he's been the court, we can do in the meantime? Mr. Scrocky. Let me see if we can put somebody else on to fill the gap, but the court, all right, okay. Scrocky, thank you. You may step down. Oh, the witness, okay. The clerk, Judge, since he's been sworn, can we at least have him state his name for the record? Mr. Scrocky, Mr. Anderson, could you please state your name for the record and spell your last name, please? Michael Anderson, Anderson. The clerk, thank you. Scrocky, thank you. Okay, you can step down. The witness, okay. Wait outside if you would, and we'll get back to you as soon as counsel comes. Miss Hayden. Your Honor, I was wondering if while we're waiting for the next witness, if we could take a quick restroom break. The court, yeah, probably that's appropriate. Well, you expect him shortly? He might be here. Yeah, he's not too far from here. The court, all right, you can take a break, folks. Take a walk. Jury out at 9:33. The court, Mr. Traverso, did you get whatever it was you were concerned about with regard to Mr. Anderson? Mr. Traverso, I did. I just wanted to have a moment to read. I got some new discovery, so I just wanted to read it. The court, okay. Just now I got it, or this morning? Well, I guess we'll be in break on a short break here. Mr. Traverso, all rise. This matter stands in brief recess. All rise. His Honor, the court. This United States District Court is again in session. The court, please be seated. Okay, are we ready to go? Yes, we are. Okay, and you have counsel present, Mr. Anderson? The witness, mm-hmm. And would you identify yourself? Mr. Hers, yes. Good morning, Your Honor. Robert Hers on behalf of Michael Anderson. The court. Okay, and Mr. Anderson, at any time, if you want to confer with your lawyer before answering the questions, you have the right. So just tell me, all right? Bring the jury in. Can you tell me what exhibit number the stipulation was? Anybody remember? Miss Lamoureux, 465, I believe, Your Honor. The court, 465. Do you memorize the numbers of all the exhibits? Miss Lamoureux, that's my goal. Yeah, good luck with that. The court, okay, please be seated and you may continue, Mr. Scrocky. Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Anderson. Good morning. Sir, if you could tell the jury how old you are, 36. And where did you grow up, Mr. Anderson? Anchorage, partly. My father was in the military, so we moved around a lot. My father was in the military, so we moved around a lot. Did you spend any time in Fairbanks? Yes, approximately 6 or 7 years. Okay, and what kind of educational background do you have? Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, Bachelor of Science in Mine Engineering. Where did you get those degrees? Chemistry degree at UAA. Mine engineering degree with UAF. Mr. Anderson, what kind of employment have you had in the course of your life? Mine engineering, I worked as a pilot for a while. I worked as a chemist at an environmental lab for a while. Are you married? Yes. Any children too? Where is your wife from? Russia. Russia, Mr. Anderson. Do you know Mr. Schaefer Cox? Yes. How long have you known Mr. Cox? Since mid-2008 or so? Mid-2008, could you? Approximately 4 years. Tell the jury how you first came to meet him. We met when we were involved in the 2008 Republican convention. And how did that come to pass? We were both delegates during the convention, and that's when you first met him? Yes, and can you tell the jury how your relationship evolved from that point? We became friends, got to know each other through, some political things he was doing, and in 2009, I had been laid off from my regular job, so I needed a little cash, so I worked with him through the summer doing some construction and yard projects, and we spent a lot of time talking then. Talking on the job site? Do you have an occasion to meet him socially or go to his house? Things like that? On occasion, yes. How about him over to your place? I can't think of any time that we met there. Do you have a mix between your families and interchange socially between your families, or was it just you and him? Not much interchange, it was just me and him. I'd like you to turn your attention, Mr. Anderson, to a point in time when you might have had some discussions with Mr. Cox about the political situation and the economic situation facing the United States. Do you recall having conversations with him about that? Yes. When was about the right time frame, the first sort of time you had a conversation with him about that? We had conversations in early 2009 on through the summer and then continuing. Early 2009 through the summer of 2009? Affirmative. And continuing. Tell the jury what kind of discussions you had with Mr. Cox about those circumstances. Just a general concern of economic collapse, ensuing martial law as a possibility. And with respect to the martial law possibility, did you have any discussions about what your reaction and his reaction would be about that? Well, it was, if there was a Stalin-esque type martial law, then we would want to be able to protect ourselves rather than just lay down and let it happen. There's a couple of things you said in there I want to inquire about. You said Stalin-esque. Did I hear you correctly? What do you mean by Stalin-esque? Mass arrest, purges of various groups, and who would be doing this pursuant to these conversations you had with Mr. Cox? Whoever would be enforcing martial law, and there's no identification of who that might be specifically. Okay. It was just a general concern. And at the tail end of your first statement, you mentioned Stalin-esque. You were saying you weren't going to just lay down about that. Could you explain what you mean by that? And specifically, I was thinking of a quote out of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. But we would fight back. If they came to take us, or they were taking our families, taking people out of cars at checkpoints, then we would have to attack them before they could come for our families. Did those conversations evolve into an agreed upon plan of some type with you and Mr. Cox? Not a specific plan. It was generally, if it comes to that, we would have to identify who was doing it and take them out before they could come for us. I mean, kill them before they could come for us. Kill them before they came for you? Yes, and that was kind of the subject of the discussion. As part of that subject of your discussion with Mr. Cox, did you engage or become someone to do something for him in the respect to that conversation? Yeah, there was an idea of collecting information on who any potential enforcer could be, who could potentially carry out those orders, collecting home address information. Is that what you did? I did some. With Mr. Cox's knowledge, yes. How long did you work on collecting this information, this personal information as you called it? I actually didn't start it for quite a while, probably a period of about maybe 3 months or so. Mr. Traverso, I couldn't hear the answer. The witness, sorry, perhaps a period of about 3 months or so. I didn't start on it for quite a while, actually. Mr. Scrocky, but did you start on it? I did start. Do you have a relative time frame about when you started on it? February, maybe March of 2010. I want to jump ahead a little bit and come back to the time frame, maybe February, March of 2010. Did something happen to you with respect to your collecting this personal information on those people, Mr. Anderson, with respect to law enforcement? And getting a little bit angry, there was an incident where, no, that's not, my question is, did something happen to you with respect to the law enforcement because of your collecting this data on people? Later on, Yeah, I was arrested on March 10th, 2011. Okay. And were you arrested with Schaefer and Coleman and Lonnie and Karen? Okay, subsequent to that, were you released? Yes. All right, and while you were in jail, how long were you in jail? Approximately 8 months. And was that an easy time or hard time for you, sir? A hard time? Okay, we're going to talk about some of that as we go through at some point, Mr. Anderson. Were you contacted with respect to having a lawyer provided for you? Yes. Can you tell the jury about when that happened? Let's see, late May, early June. What was your reaction to that? My initial reaction was absolute distrust. I thought perhaps he was a federal agent here to collect information. Was this Mr. Hers you thought was a federal agent? Uh-huh. Do you hold that opinion now, sir? No, not at all. After you obtained Mr. Hurst became your lawyer, yes? Yes. And you were released from jail? Uh-huh. Did you end up going back to jail again? No. Yes. And why was that, if you could tell the jury, please? I was arrested on a material witness warrant, no charges, and then a few days later I testified at a grand jury. Okay, there was a mechanism in play that assisted or helped with in terms of your grand jury testimony? Uh-huh. And you were given something from our office. Do you understand that? Yes. Can you tell the jury what your understanding of that was? Transactional immunity. I will not be prosecuted for anything related to the case or my testimony. And that's how you're testifying here today, correct? Yes. So nothing can be used against you for what you say here, correct? Okay, as long as I tell the truth. So with that understanding, Mr. Anderson, let's go back to February, March of 2010. Uh-huh. Okay, can you put yourself in that time frame from us? Uh-huh. Okay, so can you tell the jury what kind of information you collected on these people and how you did it? Ugh. It wasn't all home addresses, but plat numbers, and from the Department of Natural Resources, and a few standard addresses, street addresses. But my collection was off of, public information, so just DNR or Google. Did there come a point in time where you had a conversation with Mr. Cox about the work you were doing on this database? How about you call this a database of personal information, a list? What would you call it, sir? It was kind of a database. A database? It wasn't organized in a list manner. Okay. It was unusable as that. And where did you keep that information? On my computer? Did you have a conversation with Mr. Cox? Go ahead and take a drink of water if you want to. Okay. With respect to your status or your progress with this database, yeah. He called, I don't remember exactly when, but sometime in spring of 2010, just asked how it was going. He called you and asked you about it? Yeah, it was during a conversation. I don't remember if he called me specifically for that or if it was just during conversation. Okay, are you familiar with Mr. Cox's troubles with the state of Alaska, his legal troubles? Yes. Are you familiar with the issue concerning a domestic situation? Yes. Did he ask you to do something for him with respect to that? Yeah, And what's the time frame we're talking about here? Spring of 2010? Spring of 2010, yeah. What did he ask you to do? He wanted me to organize a meeting, or at least assist in organizing a meeting where he could give his story to anyone who would come to listen. Where was that meeting going to take place? It was at the IACC, Interior Alaska Conservative Coalition. You call it the IACC? Uh-huh. So where's the Interior Alaska Conservative Coalition? It's a meeting place, I guess you'd call it. It no longer exists, but it was, what was it? It no longer exists, but it was 3rd and Old Street, a strip mall in the corner. And about what time frame was this? The spring of 2010? Did you organize something for him? I assisted with it, yeah. And what did you do, and what happened with this organization, a thing you put together? I just asked if we could use the office as a meeting place, and did Mr. Cox show up? Yes. And about how many people showed up to the meeting? About 20. And what did he tell them? Just that the claims made in the DV case were false, that the claims of abuse were fabricated by the police officer and his mother-in-law. How long did he talk? 2.5 hours, I suppose. Did Marty Cox make any statement or take a microphone? No. Was she there? I don't remember her being there. Do you recall her standing up and saying her own piece about this? I don't remember that. Well, I'm asking, did it happen or not? Oh no, she wasn't there. She wasn't there? No. Did there come a point in time, Mr. Anderson, where Mr. Cox asked you to participate in a militia? Yes. And you're familiar with the various groups that he organized? Yes. Could you tell the jury what your understanding of that is, of those groups? Oh, within the militia? No. Or just in general? Well, just walk our way back, okay, up towards the militia if we could. Yeah, a second militia, the Second Amendment Task Force, the Liberty Bell, and then later on the Alaska Assembly Post. Let's break those down. The Second Amendment Task Force, what's your understanding about that? What that group was about? It was simply an occasional gathering of people who wanted to talk about gun rights. Were you a member of that group? I attended a few times. What about the Liberty Bell Network? What was that all about? It was a responder program. If someone thought their rights were being violated by the police, for example, if they were pulled over, then they could call the Liberty Bell and people would show up with their cameras and notepads and document what had occurred. Who was the actual head of the Liberty Bell Network? Schaefer, to the best of my knowledge. Are you familiar with the organization, the Alaska Peacemakers Militia? Were you a member of that group? No, I was not. Why not? I chose not to join. I felt it was a little bit narcissistic. What do you mean by that? The uniforms, the ranks, kind of like wannabe soldiers, I suppose. I felt it to be a little bit too threatening to the community. I felt it like would be painting a target on myself. Painting a target on yourself? Yeah. Can you elaborate on why you felt it was threatening to the community? Just the idea of a group assigning itself to police a community. That's how you understood it? If there was a social breakdown, I understood it that way, and it wasn't something I really wanted to be a part of. Did you communicate that to Mr. Cox? Somewhat, but not emphatically, I would say. How many, we'll just call it APM meetings, did you attend? I only remember being at 2. One was the very first one that I know of them having, and the other one was just a kind of meeting for new members that I was invited to. I didn't actually know what I was going to Schaefer's for. He just asked if I wanted to come over, so I went over, and all they did was play guitar for a while. So, who, you or Mr. Cox? No, some of the guys were there and pulled out a guitar and started singing songs for a while, and that was the second I had been to. The first one I went to, they talked about all the uniforms and ranking structure and stuff like that. Were you on an email distribution list? Of the APM? Yeah. Do you recall getting emails from the APM membership? Yeah. Who would be the one instituting those emails? Schaefer mostly, I think. Do you have an understanding of the command structure of the APM generally? What would that be? Well, there's what's called a Sons of Issachar, and then those were the officers, I guess, the command stuff. And then there was the Sons of Gad, and they were to be the fighters. And the Sons of Issachar would recruit a certain number of Sons of Gad below him. What was the difference between the two, the Sons of Gad and the Sons of Issachar, in terms of structure and responsibility, I guess you could say? Well, like I say, the Sons of Gad were just to be fighters if they became necessary. I guess you could relate them to enlisted in the military versus officers in the military. To your knowledge, Mr. Anderson, were there meetings that were held between these two groups? That was my understanding. We're going to pull up an exhibit for you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Scrocky, if we could have the lights, Denali. You ever testify in court before, Mr. Anderson? No. Okay, you have testified prior to this in other sort of junctional judicial functions, correct? At a grand jury, yes. A federal grand jury? Right. Yes, okay. And you were also interviewed by law enforcement when you were arrested. That's accurate? Yes. Okay, all right. Mr. Anderson, we're going to put up a photo on the screen for you and defense counsel to look at, okay? I don't want you to talk about the contents just yet until you can tell us if you're familiar with it. Mr. Scrocky, go ahead. Can you see that there, sir? Yes. At the top, it has 536002 in sort of teal-colored letters, Okay, if you could examine that and tell us if you're familiar with the contents without telling us what it is. Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Okay, have you reviewed that before coming into court? Yes. And is that an Alaska Peacemakers Militia email? Yes. Okay, and it was sent to you by Mr. Cox? Yes. Scrockett, we offer 536002, no objection times 3, it may be omitted. Okay, Mr. Anderson, what that means now is we can talk about this letter here or this email, Okay, so can you either look at the screen or can you look up here to the big screen if that's easier for you? It's your choice. I'll just look here at mine. All right, Sean, if you could blow up that section for me and include the date if you could. I'm sorry. There's a date on the upper left-hand side. Do you see that, sir? Yes. Please read it. February 14, 2010. And beneath it says Clark Brothers. Could you tell the jury who the Clark Brothers are? I don't know them very well at all. A couple of young guys who were involved in the Schaefer for a while. Did you have an occasion to meet them once or twice? Not really formally. I never really spoke to them. I just kind of had a passing hi. Okay, and this is an email you received? And it comes from February 14th of 2010. What's the address right here? Do you see that? Where they're from? Right. Oh, from, yeah, Schaefer Secretary, yes. At acsalaska.net, can you read that blue section I have highlighted there? APM has been and will be a voluntary association. Every man must decide for himself whether or not he wants to be part of APM as it stands. Use the APM manual as a reference as you decide whether or not to participate. The introduction gives our reasons for existence. The oath confession clearly states what we're doing and how we're doing it. Lex Rex summarizes our philosophy. Structure and leadership, section 2, covers the chain of command and following orders. Okay, just a couple of things, Mr. Anderson, about that. Number 3, where it says Lex Rex summarizes our philosophy, And you're familiar with that phrase, Lex Rex? With the phrase, I couldn't educate you on it very well. Do you associate that phrase with somebody? Schaefer uses it a lot. He uses it a lot. Yeah, and is your email address? Yeah, which one is it? Orion700 right there. Yes, and what's your middle name, Mr. Anderson? Orion. After the constellation, yes. Mr. Scrocky, if we can go down, please. Now if you could just read the next paragraph that I've marked in blue. I'm the commanding officer. The commanding officer appoints officers to command staff to give wise counsel. He also appoints the field officers that are in direct command of the men. The structure and chain of command must be followed, and if any part of this is unacceptable to you, you can leave with no ill will. Join another organization and count me and the APM as firm allies. Keep going. Hal and Eric, I would greatly value your wisdom and insight as command staff. You would not have anyone directly under your command. You just help me make good plans and give wise counsel. Do you know, Mr. Anderson, who Hal and Eric are? Eric, I don't know. Hal, I assume, is Hal Hume. Hal Hume, I'm guessing. Okay, that's the only Hal you're associating? That's the only Hal I know. All right. In association with the APM, yes. How about Les and Bill? Les would be Les Serby, and Bill, I don't know who that would be. And what does that say after that, after Bill? I would like for you to be the field officers and start out each in a command of a company. How many men? 30 men. And the next line, Mike and Dave, I would like you to be in a special tech indirect warfare team that would probably be in a Unit 2. With regard to that sentence, Mr. Anderson, is that referring to you as the Mike? Mike, yes, I believe so. And, yeah, it is. When it says their special tech indirect warfare team, can you explain what that to the jury, please? He was interested in and helping me build a GPS jammers or cell phone jammers, electronic warfare type stuff. GPS jammers and cell phone jammers, That's what he spoke to you about? That's what he was interested in. Did you take him up on that? No, I never answered him. Who is Steve? I don't know who Steve is. What's Steve asked to do in this sentence? If you could read it, please. I would like you to stay very low profile and serve mostly as a PR man, and also give specialized counterintelligence training to the men as needed. And there's a reference down here to Philip and Isaac. What do they get to be? Privates in units 3, 4, and respectively. Scrocky, if you can scroll down, please. And who signs it at the end? Schaefer Cox. Scrocky, thank you. If you can have the lights, Denali, when you have a second. Mr. Anderson, do you have any knowledge of Mr. Cox leaving the state of Alaska or to do speaking engagements? I knew he had gone out of the state to make speeches. Do you recall when that was? Not really. I actually never listened to the speeches that he made. I'm not sure when they were. Okay, to the best of your recollection, and it doesn't have to be a very specific date or month, but okay, a quarter of a year would be fine if you can do it. If you can't, that's fine. I think he did summer of 2010, best guess. Do you know where he went? I know he went to Montana, though he said he was going to Ireland once, but I don't know if he actually went. Okay, went to Montana? Did there come a point in time when you became aware of a guy named Aaron Bennett? Yes. Who is Aaron Bennett? He is the owner of Far North Tactical. Do you know how to spell his name for the record? Bennett. You mentioned Far North Tactical. What's that? It's a store that sells, well, it's a gun store. They sell body armor as well, bunny boots, tents, military surplus stuff. Military surplus, yes. And other things, yeah. How about firearms? They do now. They did not before. Before we were arrested, they did not. That I know. Well, that I know of. That you know of, and I know he recently started selling them. But okay, how do you come to meet Mr. Bennett? Schaefer Schaefer introduced him to me in the fall of 2009. Okay, for what? Just because of a social thing, or what was going on with the introduction? No, Schaefer and I were on our way to a luncheon with a friend of who was from out of state, a congressman from Montana, and Schaefer wanted to stop by Far North Tactical to look at some stuff, and I don't remember what it was he was going to look at, but during that time, Aaron Bennett was the store owner. He was there, and that's when he talked. Was there a time when you attended some sort of collection of people at Far North Tactical with Mr. Bennett and others? Yes. And could you describe what that meeting was about, if it was a meeting, and that what time frame was it? Shall I go through and just tell the whole thing, or if you can start, and I'll stop you when I think you need to stop. Okay, yeah, it was late July or early August of 2010, and I was assisting with a hot dog stand, a fundraiser that was at Far North Tactical's new location. Far North Tactical was having a grand opening, and the IACC was involved or invited to set up their hot dog stand for a fundraiser, and I was asked to assist with that. And you did that? I did that, So who was in attendance at this gathering? Let's see, Bennett, of course, and his employees. Bill Fulton was there, and the customers. Okay, who is Bill Fulton? It was the only time I've met him. I know he ran a gun store down here. He was a friend of Aaron Bennett's. And other than that, I don't know much about him. Have you ever been to Mr. Fulton's shop in Anchorage? No, I've never been there. You said it was a gun store. Do you know it's a gun store? I guess I don't know for a fact. That's what I'm told. Okay, a tactical store or a gun store. But you don't know if he sells guns or not, do you? I guess I can't say I do. I've never. All right, been there. So Mr. Fulton shows up. Yes, affirmative. Please tell the jury what kind of personality Mr. Fulton has. I found him, that you observed on that occasion. I found him to be extremely gruff, a fat drunkard, rude, extremely violent. And you have some particulars about the violent piece you want to share with the jury in terms of this meeting? Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir. Affirmative. How did he get there? What was his point of being there? He was invited there by Aaron Bennett to sell some of his goods during the grand opening. Did he bring some goods up to sell? Yeah, he had, military packs and some military propylene underwear, things like that. Okay. I don't know if he had guns there or not, but all right, so that's his purpose of being there at the meeting. That was what I understood. Affirmative. And so something happened during the day with respect to Mr. Fulton and others. Yeah, Fulton had invited us to get together that evening, and he said Schaefer had some idea or some plan that he wanted to tell us about. Let me stop you there. How did you know that Mr. Cox had a plan he wanted to tell you about? Well, that's what we were told. We were told to come to the meeting and hear Schaefer's plan, basically, and so I was already there, so I figured I'd go. And affirmative. So it's you, Bennett, Fulton, affirmative. And some others, yes. And did Mr. Cox ever show up? Yeah, he was late. We gathered there about 30 minutes into it. Schaefer still hadn't showed up either. It was either Bill Fulton or who called, or Bill Fulton asked Aaron Bennett to call. I don't remember which anymore, but Bill Fulton wanted to get Schaefer down there, and so they called. Schaefer was going down to do some errands, and he said, Schaefer, get down here. We're all waiting for you. And then Les Zerby showed up first, who was at the time Schaefer's second in command, I believe. Schaefer finally comes in with his 2-year-old baby boy. Let me stop you there. We'll go back on track in a second. Okay, is this about the same time frame that Mr. Cox is having issues with the state court system? Yes. Okay, so he got his son with him, and he shows up, and so take it from there. Okay, anyway, he comes in, he acts a little confused as to why he's there, and Fulton asks him, what's the plan that we're here to hear about? Schaefer talks for a while about, how he's being railroaded in the court system and his political ideas, and everyone's getting kind of restless. They just want to know why they're there. And Fulton prods him. And how does he do that? Just Schaefer tell us why we're here and tell us why we're here. And Schaefer talks a little bit about filling some more paperwork in the court system, and it's not quite what Bill Fulton wanted to hear. And Fulton says, no, not that. What we talked about. I'm doing this the best as I can remember it. It's been a while. So is there, Mr. Fulton says to Mr. Cox about that? About what? He wants to know what the plan is they talked about. And so Schaefer went into a generalized idea of, well, we're going to arrest some judges, and we'll arrest judges and put them on trial before Thursday hearing. This was on Sunday. A trial in front of what? Was he specific? No, he didn't go into that. Not that I remember anyway. Now, this was on Sunday, and his court hearing for his OCS case, I believe, was supposed to be on Thursday. And I was just finding this out that night when I was there hearing him. So the idea was arrest some judges and put them on trial before the hearing. And Bill Fulton wanted to hear what the actual plan was. How are you going to do this? In other words, arrest the judges. Yeah, and so we could bury some connexes on Monday, and when we could arrest them on Tuesday and put them on trial Wednesday, it was kind of a general thing. Bill Fulton wants to know what's the plan, how are we going to do this, and then all of a sudden, Les Zerby pops up and says, there is no plan. We don't have a plan to do this. And Bill Fulton at that point, and my memory's a little vague, and I don't remember if he actually pulled out a knife or not. I would say my memory's like 50% on that. I want to say he did, but I can't say it firmly. What I distinctly remember is him kind of lunging toward Les Zerbe and saying, "No plan? What do you mean you have no plan? You're supposed to have a plan, you fucking piece of shit. I'm going to slit your throat. I'm going to kill you, Les." And he kept going on and on and on. And Les Zerbe and Schaefer were very calm, and finally things calmed down a little bit after several minutes of this nonsense. And Schaefer says, we just don't have a plan. We don't have logistics for this. We can't do it. What do you mean we don't have logistics, Schaefer? I spent $30,000 bringing men and equipment up here. You want me to send them all back? And Bill Fulton, Bill Fulton was counting with this. Schaefer finally just says, Bill, look, I've never been in a fight in my life. I've never even punched someone in the nose, and I don't want to start now. And then Fulton says, what do you want me to do, Schaefer? You want me to call it off? And Schaefer says, yeah, call it off. And so from that point on, it cooled down. It looked like Schaefer had convinced Fulton to call it off. Call what off? This thing of arresting judges. It never got into an actual worked out plan. The whole thing was really strange. Okay, and then finally it ended when we went out into the parking lot. We were getting ready to go home, and Bill Fulton said he was going to go to a bar and get drunk and beat up some soldiers, and that was the end of it. And that was your only exposure to Mr. Fulton? Yeah, thank God. That was the last time I ever saw him. Mr. Anderson, did you ever have occasion to sit in with meetings with Mr. Cox, Mr. Barney, and Ken Thessing? No, I never have. Do you ever have occasion to sit in with a meeting of Mr. Cox, Mr. Barney, and Gerald Olson? No, never, no. So you wouldn't know what was said in those meetings if they occurred, would you? No. You mentioned that this was about the time of the OCS case, Mr. Cox's issues with the Office of Children's Services. Yeah, that was the Fulton event, you mean? Yeah. I think it was toward the end. I don't know I wasn't for sure if that was still going on, and I was invited to the meeting, but I think that was it was later on in the scene, I believe, But, okay, did Mr. Cox ask you to do something for him when he had the issues with the state case concerning his wife? Let's see. Repeat the question. I'm sorry. Sure. Did Mr. Cox ask you to do something for him in connection with the state case when he was charged with against his wife, or the DV case, you mean? Yeah, the DV case. We'll just call it that. Well, there's just the organizing the meeting so that he could tell the people his story. Affirmative. How about holding things for him? Oh, yeah, this was the judge. I understood that the judge had ordered him not to have any weapons in his house, and so for several days after he was arrested, he asked if I could hold them for him. So I went over, and his attorney was there and in the house as well, and I picked up his weapons for him and stored them. Can you tell the jury physically what you took away from his house as you saw it when you were there? A bunch of rifles, 20, 25 rifles. I want to say maybe 10 handguns, a bunch of ammunition, at least one tactical vest, a homemade gun. There were some empty grenade bodies attached to the tactical vest. Got your gloves on? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put a couple of exhibits there in front of you. Let's start with the top one. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a thick box, and you're going to pull that out. That's Exhibit 408, admitted into evidence. Just keep the tip pointed down. Do you recognize that item, sir? If I can get it out, hang on. Sure, yeah, I recognize it. Is that something Mr. Cox gave you from his home? Yeah, to remove, yeah. During this situation, yeah. Had you seen that gun before that occasion? He had it shown to me shortly before. I just don't remember exactly when. I want to say maybe a month or so before. Where were you when he showed you that gun in his bedroom? What did he tell you about that gun? He said it was an automatic homemade. Homemade automatic, Is there another item with that gun there? Another metallic item there in front of you that came out of the box? This? Yeah, there was anything else attached to that gun when you saw it? A magazine, something like that? I don't remember a magazine. Okay, but that's the one that he described to you as being automatic. Yeah, and he said homemade. Yeah, he said it was something he had built. If you could maybe try to find a way to put those back in the box, so you took that gun and those other guns. I'm sorry, I'll wait until you're done. Okay, so you took that one back to your house, Mr. Ennis? Yes. We have in front of you the next box. Is Exhibit 404. Have you seen that item before, sir? Yes, both of them, the 22 and the 22. I'm not sure about. It looks familiar, but the hose, silencer, yes, I've seen. So tell the jury how you came across the silencer you just talked about. It was in the bottom of the duffel bag of the guns that he had given me. How did you come across that? I was curious. I looked in it to see what was in the bag, essentially. Yeah, Where did you find that silencer? Sitting in the bottom of his duffel bag. When you found that silencer, Mr. Anderson, was it connected to the Ms. Hayden, Your Honor, I'm going to object to the characterization that this is a silencer. It hasn't been shown. There's been no expert report on it. Fair objection. The question was leading in form also. Scrocky. Mr. Anderson, with respect to what's to that item that's attached to the end of the pistol. When you observed it in the bag, is that in the same condition that you recall? Yeah, it appears to be the same one. Yeah, was it attached to anything at that time? I don't remember it being attached. When you saw it, did you understand and observe it for what it was? Yeah, I understood it for the intent of it. Thank you. I believe the floor to your bottom left, there's some grenade bodies. Could you examine one or two of those? And yeah, are they familiar to you to some extent with respect to your testimony about what you received from Mr. Cox? Yeah, they're familiar. And you mentioned the tactical vest. Explain to the jury what you observed and the circumstances of observing those items when you received them from Mr. Cox. They were 5 to 10 or so, I think it was, attached to a tactical vest. I just remember that I grabbed the tactical vest. They were attached. And where did you place those items? I put them out in my tool shed out behind my house. Was there another larger firearm mixed in with the ones you talked about? There was a 30 caliber 1919 Browning and other caliber. What kind of firearms you can recall? A couple of semi-auto ARs, a couple of AKs, and a whole bunch of hunting rifles and handguns. And how long did you keep those items in your home, sir? They were there, I would say, about 2 months. And you kept them outside of your home? Yeah, well, in a tool shed attached to the back of my house. I see them. Were you able to observe them being there over the course of the time that you had them? Yeah, well, anytime I went out to the tool shed, I would see them there. Sure. At some point, did you notice that they were no longer there? Yes. Could you tell the jury how that occurred and when that happened? Schaefer came by and picked them up a couple of months after I took them from him. Okay, you could probably dish the gloves now, Mr. Anderson. Okay. Sir, in reference to the OCS case that you talked about with Mr. Cox and his issues about the Office of Child Services, did you do other things for him? Occasionally. Does the name Wendy Williams mean anything to you? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah. I was, one day he called up and he was going to have a meeting with the OCS officer, and it was going to be at his father's church, and anyway, he wanted to let me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. All right. What was the time frame we're talking? Mr. Traverso. Wait a minute, can't the witness finish his answer? Scrocky. Well, I will get to it. I was just trying to get a time frame. The objection is overruled. Go ahead, Scrocky. Yeah, it was spring, summer 2010. Okay. Answer, sometime around there, and I did interrupt you. So let's talk about the circumstances of how you got there. With respect to the church, your knowledge of that. Well, what did Mr. Cox tell you about that? I received a call the night before to schedule the meeting and asked if I'd be a part of a kind of security team to help him get away if they tried to take his son right there at the meeting. And so the meeting was going to be where? At University Baptist Church. And Mr. Cox told you that? Yes. And who else was going to be there? Les Serby was supposed to be there as well. Did he show ultimately? No, Mr. Cox told you about it was going to be at the church. How about timing? What did he tell you about that? Hold on just a second. Okay. It was going to be in the morning, and he wanted me to show up about half an hour prior to the meeting so that we could have breakfast and talk about it beforehand. And how does Wendy Williams fit into this? She was the OCS officer in the charge of the case. What did you decide to do, Mr. Anderson? I ended up that morning. I didn't make it to the pre-meeting that he wanted to do. I didn't make it to that, so I actually didn't see Schaefer. But that morning, I threw a tactical vest and an AK in the back of my car, and I headed off. Then about a mile or two from the house, I started thinking, why do I have all this crap in my car? But I ended up going, and Schaefer, and when I got there, Schaefer had just rounded the corner to go into the church. And so I decided, well, I'm here. I'm not going to do anything. I want to see how it goes for him. And so I waited there. Eventually, he came back out, got in the car and left. And then I left and went about my business. Who used the word security detail? Schaefer. Was your house searched by law enforcement, Mr. Anderson, on March 10th? Yes. Items were seized from your home? Scrocky, could we have the lights, Madam Clerk, if you could pull up 491, 492 for defense counsel? I'm sorry, counsel, could you repeat those? Scrocky, 491, 492, 494, thank you. Mr. Anderson, did you see an exhibit tag at the bottom right there, marked 491? Yeah. Is that the two items from your home? Yeah. Those are yours? Yeah. If you could scroll to 492 and the item on the right, and I circled there in blue, is that yours as well? Scrocky, and 494, and what's the item I circled in 492? Opened? We offer 491, 492, 494, no objection, times 3. All those are admitted. Go ahead. That's the inside of your home, Mr. Anderson? Yes, there's a firearm here, the black one. I've circled on the left. What kind of firearm is that? It's an AK-47. Is that what you took with you on the security detail? Yeah, that's what I put in the back of the car. 492. There appears to be a wood stove in the center. Yes, and on the right-hand side, I circled in blue. What is that item? It's a couch with an AK-47 magazine. 494. The same couch, Mr. Anderson, and 494. Affirmative. Those are clips. Yeah. Do they fit your AK? Yeah. Did you take one of those clips with you on the security detail? Yeah, I took one of them. Just the one? I don't remember if I owned that many back then. I had at least one. How many are visible in that bag? It looks like a 4 in the bag. And then one on the left-hand side. Yeah. You mentioned a tactical vest. Do you have 500? It was actually a flak vest, technically. Yeah. Agent Sutherland's going to present you Exhibit 500. If we could have the lights back on, Denali, thank you. Do you see that item there? Are those items your items, Mr. Anderson? Yeah. There appear to be 2 items in there. Is one marked 500 and one 501? I don't see markings on them. Okay, bear with me just a sec. 500 are 2 tactical vests, yes. Yes, they belong to you. And 501 is a helmet. They belong to you as well. Yes. We offer 500 and 501. No objection. They are admitted. As to those 2 vests, Mr. Anderson, you said one of them, correct me if I'm wrong, please, a tactical vest, some other type of vest. This is one. This one is just a flak vest, but that's the one. Is that the one? That's the one. That's the one I threw in there. Yeah, I think it's the only one I owned back then. You called it a flak vest. Yeah, I don't think technically it's bulletproof, but could you hold it up so it's called a flak vest? Could you hold it up so the jury can see it? Does it have a plates inside of it or what? No, it's just Kevlar. Just Kevlar. Yeah, the other one is a different desert camo. Yeah. What's that one constructed of? It's a fabric vest with pockets for ceramic plates. Like right here, yeah? Could you hold up the helmet that you had? Yeah. Did you take that with you too? No, I didn't. I don't think I even had it then. When you did the security detail, did anybody observe you there that you could tell? No. Did you do anything else with respect to this person named Wendy Williams, Mr. Anderson? Yeah, the other thing I did, Schaefer wanted to know where she lived so he can talk to her first. And then, I'm sorry? Oh, sorry. He asked you to, he said he wanted to do, he said what about what he wanted to do? He wanted to know where she lived so he said so he could go talk to her. To go talk to her, yeah. So I started to look up her address. I couldn't figure out what her address was. So one day I took one of the potential addresses with me and just drove by the house and I snapped a picture of it, of a license plate. And then I was going to use it to see if it matched up with the DMV, but it doesn't work that way, so I just deleted the picture and I didn't do any more with the Wendy Williams after all. Did you actually go to her home or someone's home you thought was Wendy Williams? I drove by someone's home, but I don't know who it was, really. What do you mean by that? I mean, you got to go to a location, correct? Yeah, well, yeah, I just don't know if I ever found out if it was actually hers. How did you get there? I drove there in my truck. And how did you find that location? I looked up a few potential addresses on the internet. And did you produce a document from your searching for Wendy Williams? Yeah, I wrote down an address. Where did you leave that address? In my truck. Was that seized? By officers in this investigation? If you could leave the lights on, Denali. 518 by our records has been admitted. 518, yes. Mr. Anderson, do you see Exhibit 518 that we have on the screen? Yeah. Is that your writing? Yeah. Sean, if you can blow up the first half. So, Mr. Anderson, tell the jury what did you do to get this information? I looked it up. I started with Google DNR, and I can't remember what else I used. It was another public record search. And you found some personal information on Wendy Williams? Yeah, I kept anything I could find. Is this the Wendy Williams you went to the home? Is this the place you went? You went and took the picture? I'm not of this person, or can you tell? I'm not sure. Scrocky, scroll down to the second one. I think this one is it. So you went to this address on Farewell Avenue. I think this is the one, yeah. And you took a picture of what, did you say? Just a license plate of a van that was in the driveway. Why did you do that? I was still trying to figure out if it was her or not. Because Mr. Cox asked you to do that? And did you have occasion to report back, Mr. Cox, about the information you acquired here and what you did with respect to the visit to a person's home? I just kind of gave up, and then one day he called me and asked me if I'd found it yet. And what did you tell him? I told him I hadn't. And did he mention anything else? Did he mention anything or say anything to you with respect to Wendy Williams? He just said that he needed to know where she was because if she hurts his family, she might get a bullet through her windshield. A bullet through her windshield? Scrocky, thank you. If we could have the lights Denali. Judge, we have this light. Might be a good time to take a break for lunch if you are so inclined, given the next line of inquiry. We're going to be up for a while. My clock says 11 o'clock. Whoa, we're in good shape then, Mr. Scrocky. Okay, Anderson, did you do any other work with respect for Mr. Cox with respect to looking for other people? Yeah, he called me a couple of times to ask me. Okay, let me just quickly say this. Wendy Williams is the one who's charging and trying to take Schaefer Cox's son away from him. And just because somebody says something that he don't know is being recorded doesn't mean that he's actually going to follow through on it. Lots of people say they're going to kill somebody or they're going to put a bullet through somebody's windshield. It don't mean anything until they actually have the intent to do so. And you also got to understand that we're talking about the government trying to take his son away. Yeah, he called me a couple of times to ask me, okay, for address, could we have 504, please? Could you open that up of the package, Mr. Anderson, look in the contents? This is 504, yes, sir. Do you recognize that item there, Mr. Anderson? Yes. Whose writing is that? That's mine. That came from your home? Yeah, in connection with the search on March 10th of 2011, yeah. And you reviewed it before coming into the court today, yeah. And it has information in it concerning your activities with Mr. Cox. We offer 504, no objection, it may be admitted. Could we go to 504-009 and if we could have the lights Denali? Mr. Anderson, you have a choice. You could either look at the notepad if your eyes are good enough, or you can look up at the computer screen. Okay, yeah, I'll just look here as we go through. Do you recognize this page, Mr. Anderson? There's information on it and some names, correct? Affirmative. There's also a diagram here, affirmative, that I circled in the center, right? Did you put all the writing on this piece of paper? Yeah. When did you do that? In the spring or right in the spring of 2010? The spring of 2010, Please describe to the jury the circumstances of the creation of that map, or is this document here? Schaefer and I had met, and and he was asking how it was going, with the whole database thing, and he also talked to me about how he thought there was a hit team out to get him. A hit team out to get him, correct. Do you have any further information about what the hit team was or what the circumstances of that was? He just felt that the feds had sent a hit team after him, and he wanted to know who they might be and where they might be. So where did this meeting take place, IACC? Were you guys alone with other people, or what were the circumstances of your meeting? It was alone. Okay, so let's start up at the top. There's 2 phone numbers and a name. Can you read the name? Vernon's. Do you know the Vernons? Yeah, not very well, but I know them. How do you know them? That through the IACC and some of the meetings with Schaefer's done. I see them maybe once every 4 months, something like that. Do you know their first names, Lonnie and Karen? How often would you see them? You said every couple months. Would you ever see them? And I'm making a compound question. I apologize. Sorry. Would you see them outside the IACC? Just at Schaefer's meeting of the Second Amendment Task Force, I seen them there. I don't think I ever seen them outside of those 2 venues. So who gave you this information here at the top? Schaefer did. And why did he give you those numbers? I don't remember the part of the conversation at all. How about the next sentence? Can you read that? Need names of federal marshals. Why did you write that down? We were trying to figure out who might be after him, and that was one, possible lead, find out who they were. So that's the one you wrote down. Yeah, how about the next line? Can you read the next line? The paperwork from Vernon's and a question mark, yes, So what's that about? I don't know. I can't remember. How about the next below there with a question mark? I think that had to do again with one could offer Schaefer. What does that say, Swat? Let's draw your attention to the center left. Affirmative. A name, scribble, and a name. Do you see those? Yeah, what do you know about the first name? What does it say there? Gary Tillip. What do you know about Gary Tillip? He's a trooper that lived 2 houses up from the road from Schaefer. Did Mr. Cox ever convey to you his feelings about Trooper Tillip? Yeah, he thought he was maybe a sort of okay, but he called him Trooper Butthole. How did Mr. Tillip, Trooper Tillip's name, get on that piece of paper? He was just giving me some names to get started with. On the whole database thing, yeah, because I didn't know where to start. And so he gave you those names, Scrocky, can you blow up this section, please? So we have Trooper Tillip, Affirmative. Do you see that? Yeah. That's the scribble, Can you make out some letters underneath the scribble? BU, what does that signify? It was going to be Burke Barack. Schaefer ran through the Burke Barack real quickly. I never heard of the name Burke before, but I didn't get it written down before he went to the next name, and I scribbled on it, and I figured I would deal with it later. So he gave you that name. Just don't write it. You just don't write it. You just couldn't write it fast enough. Yeah, I never went back to it. Do you know who is Burt Barack is? A trooper captain. Where in Fairbanks does he work with Mr. Taleb? To your understanding, Trooper Taleb? I would assume so, since they're both troopers. So we have Taleb, Burt Barack. Let's go to the third one. Can you read that name there, Ron Wall? Same question. Where did you get the name Ron Wall, Schaefer? Do you know who Ron Wall is? A trooper lieutenant. What post? He works in Fairbanks. Mr. Scrocky, can we back out of that, please? Can we enlarge that? Mr. Anderson, I'm going to direct your attention to this, and I'm outlining the drawing in the center of the page. Affirmative. Did you do that? Yeah. Could you tell the jury what that is? It's a poor sketch of the federal building in Fairbanks. Please describe for the jury why you made a poor sketch of the federal building in Fairbanks. Well, Schaefer wanted to know who was after him, so I said, well, if anyone's following you around, maybe they're going back to the federal building because they may be working there. So you can either sit out in the parking lot or set up a camera outside the parking garage and just snap photos of license plates going in and out and see if they match up with anyone following you. What was his reaction to your suggestion? He thought that was interesting. There's some dots, along both. What do those represent? Foliage. And how about you have got some vertical lines, parking spaces, parking lot. Have you ever been to those buildings before? On what occasion and for what purpose? One, when Schaefer gave a speech at the federal building, I think a Tea Party rally actually, and then he went inside to deliver a paper that he had made up to Mike Beggick's office. Do you recall when that was? Spring of 2009. So, Mr. Anderson, is this a relatively accurate sketch of the Fairbanks Federal Building? Sort of. So, with respect to these surveillance, what did you tell him you were going to do? I just said you can set up cameras or a camera out behind the parking garage to see the license plates that are going in. And did you draw the parking garage on this diagram? Yeah. Where's that? It's over on you're looking at it. It's over on the right-hand side of the page, the rectangle there. Sort of, and the bottom rectangle, yeah. Would this be the building structure itself? Yeah, I suppose so. It was pretty rough. Mr. Scrocky, could you scroll down for us? I'd like to turn your attention, Mr. Anderson, to the bottom part of this page. This, again, is your handwriting, is it not? Yeah. Who provided you with this information here at the bottom of this page, Schaefer? And on the left-hand side of the top, affirmative. What does that say? 3 of them, I think. So I think he was saying there were 3 people, indiscernible. So read the first line if you could. Curtis, female, DHS Border Control, and the next line, Tom Studler, DHS. Do you know who these people are, Mr. Anderson? No, I never looked them up. I don't know Trina. I don't remember what he said about the first 2 at all. We'll get to this. Okay. Bucamp in a minute. Okay. What did he tell you about these people here? These 2, Curtis and Tom Studler? I don't remember what he said about the other item then. Curtis. He couldn't remember her first name on her first name. That's all I could remember. But you got border control out of it, didn't you? Yes. What about Mr. Studler? I didn't remember anything about that. Were you given any reasons as to why? No. Were you given these names? No. Let's go to the next. The last line on that page there that you've got some writing. Can you read that for the jury, please? Trina Bucamp. Keep going. Oh, sorry. TSA trainer. You ever meet Miss Bucamp? No, I never have. Don't know if she has a family or what she does for a living. Well, I assume TSA, but did Mr. Cox tell you why he gave you his sick name, SIC, to put on this database for you? Her name? Sorry, yeah, her name. He just stated she's someone I know who goes to my church, a nice lady, but one day she may just follow orders and she may have to go. Are those, it's just the words he used, may have to go, yeah. She may have to go, Even though she was a very nice lady, yeah. He added that too, yeah. What kind of research did you do on these individuals? Mr. Anderson, none. Were there other items taken from your home, Mr. Anderson, concerning your search on this database, as you called it? Yeah, there's one there I'm familiar with. Could we have 506, please? Could we go to -28, please, before we have to leave 104, Mr. Anderson? We have 504.28 up on the screen. Okay, there's a lot of calculations on that page. Do you see those? Yeah. What are those dealing with? Maybe they deal with airflow calculations, and it's something you put together. Yeah, all right. We're dealing with airflow of air. Let's go to the right-hand side of the page up on the top. Do you see those 2 names there? Yeah. Can you read both of those names? Ron Wall and Lawrence Piscoa. Is that your writing, sir? Yes. And how, by what occasion did those two names get there? I don't know, I don't remember, but it's on this page. Maybe he called me up while I was working on it, I don't know. You mentioned you knew Mr. Wall, who Mr. Wall was, or Trooper Wall, affirmative. How about Lawrence Piscoa? I don't know, I don't remember anything about him. If you could pull him up for Defense Counsel 506. Mr. Anderson, and that actually, before we move on, could you put 504 back in the envelope, please, or just hand it to Agent Sutherland and he'll take care of it, that one? Do you have 506 in front of you? Yeah. Okay, in the envelope there should be an item we have you look at in the brown envelope. All right, I guess it's this thing. Agent Sutherland, it's already out and on top. Okay. Do you see that book? Yeah. You've seen that book prior to coming in today? Yeah, I've seen it. A yellow notebook? Oh, I think we're looking at the wrong one. Yeah, on my screen. The yellow note. That's because of the scan, but the yellow notebook you have in your hand, sir. Yeah, that's also something that was seized from your residence. And concerns the database. Yeah. And there's writings in it that concerns the database. We offer 506. No objection. 506 may be admitted. Mr. Scrocky, that's the cover for 506. Why do you use that note? What did you use that notebook for? Writing in bad weather for outdoors? Primarily, and for the most part, what kind of information it contained in there? Survey information. I'm sorry, survey information. Survey information. Affirmative. For what? For some claims I was looking at. What kind of claims? Mining claims. If we could have 004 and enlarge it. Do you see the listing there, Mr. Anderson? That's in your yellow Ride in the Rain field notebook. Yeah. Is that your writing? Affirmative. Please read it for the jury. Federal hit list. Jimmy Johnson, Federal Marshal, ANC. ANC stands for what? Anchorage. Can you tell the jury the circumstances of this entry in your book, please? Yeah, after Schaefer told me about the feds being after him, and through my own anger at this time, I started to look things up, and I found his name in a news article, and I don't remember what it was about. I think it was a drug case, but I don't remember specifically anymore. I wrote that down, and then I thought I don't ever want to go there. I don't want to become that hateful, and I shut the book, and I never looked at it again. Did you do any research on Marshall Johnson? With the exception of seeing him in the article, I don't think I ever did. No follow-up? Negative. Why did you write Federal Hit List? It was out of my own anger and because of what was going on in Schaefer's life on what I believe to be. What kind of research did you do to get this information? I went to Google, typed in Federal Marshal something or other, I don't remember, and a news article popped up, so I read the news article and I found his name in a news article. So you did a Google search? Yes. Scrocky, could you keep the lights down, Denali? We'll be moving to another exhibit. Mr. Anderson, does the name Malik Jones mean anything to you? Yeah. How so? He was a trooper Schaefer called me about once. Do you recall when you got that call from Mr. Cox? It must have been around sometime in October. It was in the fall of 2010. I want to say October. What was the call about? If I remember right, one of Schaefer's friends had been picked up near Cantwell for an expired license plate, and Malik Jones arrested him. The passenger in the car was left without knowing where the driver was headed to with the trooper. Where were you getting this information from, Schaefer? And he just wanted to know, I believe he wanted to know where Malik Jones was based so he could go bail the guy out. Did he tell you who this guy was that he wanted to go bail out? I think it was a guy named David Roner. David Roner, affirmative. Do you know who David Roner is? I shook his hand once, but I don't really remember. What kind of event were you there with Mr. Roner? It was one of the Schaefer Sovereignty Group. It was an Alaska Assembly Post meeting. That's the only one I ever went to, and that was where I met him. So Schaefer calls you about David Roner, affirmative, and he gives you the name of who? Malik Jones, all right. If we could have 125, please, for Counsel and Mr. Anderson. So for the record, Counsel, we're looking at 125.002, the bottom right-hand side. Mr. Anderson, do you recognize the note there? You've shown it to me before, and independent of that, independent of that, I've never seen it. Okay, is the name familiar to you? Malik Jones, yeah. Okay, are you familiar with the information that's on there? The only thing I'm familiar with would be the lot and block number. And how, with respect, without going into the contents, how are you familiar with that? When Schaefer called me up, he asked what I remember looking at the executive and judicial salary list, which doesn't list addresses. It just lists the town that a person works in, and it said Fairbanks. And I remember I told him, well, he works in Fairbanks. I don't remember actually looking up that's fine, block number, but that's the format that I would find on the DNR website. So do you recognize the writing on that note I believe it's Schaefer's, it's not mine. We offer 125,002, no objection, no objection. Miss Hayden, I'm not sure a proper foundation has been laid. The witness doesn't seem to know who wrote this or where it came from, so my objection would be foundation. The court, I think it may be admitted, number 125 is in evidence. Mr. Scrocky, Mr. Anderson at the top, can you read what that says, Malik Jones? And there's an address, it looks like 1201 Calla Lily. Okay, and so you would provide that information to Mr. Cox that you stated? I remember telling him that he worked in Fairbanks. I don't specifically remember looking up the his house location or property location. I may have, since that's the same, that lot and block number is the same format that I would find at the DNR website. That would be this information here. Yeah, just all that, and I remember is on the phone, talking to him on the phone, and looked on the judicial salary list. He works in Fairbanks. That's all I remember about that one. All right, here it is, NP. Affirmative. Is that the abbreviation for some location near Fairbanks? It looks like it be North Pole. Thank you, Mr. Scrocky. Could we have 505 for counsel? Mr. Anderson, on the screen and in front of you is Exhibit 505. Affirmative. This screen version is 505-2. Do you recognize the document? Yeah. Where did it come from? From my place or my truck? I'm not sure which. Do you recall acquiring this document, sir? Yeah, I printed it off. And what kind of document is it? It's a financing statement off the DNR website for a snow machine. It seems you went to the DNR website a lot. And how come? It's a good source of public information. Can you tell us about the name of the person on this page? Yeah, John Marion. He pulled me over for an expired license plate, and he towed my truck, and he left me in a parking lot stranded at 30 below, so I was pretty pissed off. So what did you do? I looked up his address, and I wanted to leave a nasty gram in his mailbox, and then I never did. You never did? I never went by, no. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Did you ever... Scrocky, if we could have the lights... Denali, thanks. Did you ever have occasion to meet Coleman Barney in jail? I got to know him in jail. Before that, the only time I met him before that was on March 7th, a few days before the arrest. We'll come back to that. Okay, with respect to... Excuse me, counsel. Yes, sir. I kind of realize here that I've had you in court for an hour and a half already in the session. I ought to give you a little walk around, but it's going to be a short one. Can we do a 5-minute break here, folks? Clerk, all rise. The matter stands in recess for 5 minutes. All rise. His Honor, court, this United States Court is again in session. Please be seated. You may bring the jury in. How long do you all need for lunch today? An hour is good for the prosecution, Judge. Pardon? An hour is plenty. That'd be fine with us. An hour is fine, all right. Mr. Traverso, your microphone, please. Thank you. All right, you may continue. Yes, Your Honor, we have a couple of exhibits to admit that I've spoken to defense counsel about. If we could have the lights, please. Scrocky, Mr. Anderson, you're probably going to recognize this document. Do you see the highlighted section of Exhibit 194-41? Yeah. Is that a name that you recognize? Yeah, that's the LCS worker. All right, and page, if we could have the next page, please. It should be 194-43. That appears to be page 3 of that document, sir. Affirmative. And in the upper left, do you recognize the name of the person without telling us what it is? Seth Cox. Thank you. We offer 194, 41, 43, Your Honor. No objection. 194 is already admitted. These are 2 specific pages that we had a discussion about. We redacted certain information. What are the numbers, 41 and 43? Objection. No objection. May be admitted. If we could have the lights, Denali. Mr. Anderson, briefly, this is a document you have not reviewed before, correct? There's a caption here that's in the matter of Seth Cox. Do you see that? Yes. And then there's a name that's highlighted. Do you see that name? Yes. Can you please read that name? Wendy Williams. Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. You mentioned earlier that you had spent some time in jail in connection with some charges, correct? Tell us, the jury, how long you spent in jail. About 8 months. And could you tell the jury when you were first incarcerated, how you were situated, how you were placed? I was put in segregation. What does that mean? I was in a small cell by myself. Was that difficult for you? Yes. Tell the jury how difficult it was for you, Mr. Anderson. I had just been charged with conspiracy to murder someone I thought was Schaefer's friend, as well as a judge I had never heard of before. And I wondered, how am I going to prove my innocence? What was Schaefer up to? I had just been told that he was accused of, and how I am going to get my family through this, and they'd be better off if they didn't have to deal with this at all. So, what kind of impact, sir, did those thoughts have on you? I became suicidal. Did you attempt to take your own life, Mr. Anderson? Yeah, I chewed the guard off. I chewed the guard off my glasses, and there was a bench in the room with a pivot, and I put the glasses, in the pivot near the fulcrum and squeezed them down to a sharp point, and then I sat on the floor away from the camera and started slitting my wrist. It wasn't very sharp. It was more like digging away chunks of flesh, extremely painful. I did that for several minutes unsuccessfully, and at one point I just looked down at the floor and blood dripping on the floor, and I closed my eyes, and all I could see was a black field with a flame. So I stopped, and I thought I'd have to get through this somehow. And about less than a week later, several days later, it had gotten infected, so I broke it open and started and cleaned it out with a soap and water, used a tissue to bat it down, and about that point one of the guards came by to pick me up for a court hearing, and he saw the blood, and they placed me on suicide watch. Could you tell the jury, Mr. Anderson, during the time that Mr. Cox was having his court troubles? During the time that you were working on this list, database as you call it, off and on, how much contact did you have with him on a day-to-day basis? Not a whole lot. Following the event with Bill Fulton in the summer of 2010, up to the time of the arrest, I saw him a total of 3, maybe 4 times. I'd speak with him on the phone once or twice a month. Did you have any idea what he was doing today with respect to the Alaska Peacemakers Militia? No, or anything. And all I knew he was doing his sovereignty redemption stuff, paperwork in the courts. That's all I knew about. You had seen him in court prior to going to jail? Yes. And under what circumstances? What did you hear him say when you went to court? I don't remember all that he said. When I got there, I was very late, so he was already up talking, and the only quote I remember, and I really cringed at it, that's why I remember it. We have the troopers outnumbered and outgunned and could have them all dead in one night, but we don't do that. We want to live in peace. And then I just kind of stared down at the ground, and I don't remember anymore after that. Who did he say that to? The judge? So after this, you did this to yourself, Mr. Anderson? Did you have anybody to help you out in the jail in terms of counseling? A mental health worker came by after a week on suicide watch, and did you take up a conversation? Did you engage with this person to help you out? She interviewed me. Okay, how are you doing right now? I'm doing fine. Did there come a time when people contacted you about your database? Yeah. Okay, did that surprise you? It shocked me, yeah. Why did it shock you? I didn't know what was going on, and all of a sudden this guy calls me up and asks for it. Who was that guy? J.R. Olson. Anybody else? Any other individuals? No. Nobody else called you and asked you for information on that database? On the database? No, occasionally Schaefer would call and ask how it was going, but Olson, who was the one who called me. Okay, we'll get to that too. Okay. When you were in jail, this was in Fairbanks, correct? Yes, in the Fairbanks jail? What kind of interaction did you have with Mr. Cox, Mr. Barney, and Mr. Vernon? We'd see each other in jail and church. And how often? I'd say 5 times a week. Was it pretty easy to have contact with them in jail? Yeah, when we were allowed out, did you have discussion with Mr. Cox about your lawyer, Mr. Hers, who's over here in court? Yes. What did you guys talk about? We talked about the possibility of, is he a federal agent undercover? Everybody's coughing. So I heard federal agent undercover. Is that accurate? That's what I said, yes. Okay, so this guy over here, affirmative. Rob Hurst is a federal agent undercover. That's the one thing I was wondering. And you expressed that to who, Schaefer? What did he say in response? He thought it was interesting. He thought, well, maybe that is the case. At some point, did you meet Mr. Hurst? And when you met him, did you consider him to be a federal agent? I didn't trust him at all. I didn't know what to think of him, but I considered he might be. How many meetings did you have with him before that changed? We didn't meet all that often. It wasn't until after I was out of jail, actually. When you were in jail talking to Mr. Cox about your attorney, did Mr. Cox ask you to do something? He just wanted me to write an affidavit of what I thought might be going on regarding Mr. Hurst. So what do you mean writing an affidavit? What was explained to you? An affidavit stating what I thought might be going on and what would have been that Mr. Hurst was there to collect information from me to incriminate Schaefer possibly in another case. So did you take his advice? Yes, I did that. Tell the jury what you did. I wrote down my thoughts and had it notarized and gave it to Schaefer. Did you keep a copy for yourself? I had handwritten rough draft copies, but I threw them all out when I got left jail. Okay, so when you have okay, so you don't have a copy of it. I don't have them anymore. No. Did we show you a copy of it? I haven't seen it. Okay, Mr. Cox took it. Where did he tell you he was taking it to give to his attorney? And you haven't seen a copy since? Negative, no. Did there come a point in time, Mr. Anderson, when you were presented with something by Mr. Cox to sign besides an affidavit? A newspaper. A newspaper, Can you describe the circumstances of the newspaper and what you were asked to do? I was in church and there was an article in the News Miner and it had a large picture of the 22 with the homemade thing on the end of it. You were allowed to call it what you think it is. Okay, the homemade perhaps silencer on the end of it, and he wanted people to sign it because someone in the dorm room supposedly wanted an autographed copy, so Schaefer passed it around. He signed it, and I signed it, and Coleman signed it. How about Mr. Vernon? Did he sign it? Yes, okay, yeah. Have you seen a copy of the signed newspaper article? Yeah. We showed you a copy of that before coming into court, yeah. Can we have the lights, Madam Clerk? Yeah, please. Do you recognize what we have there as Exhibit 489? Yeah. Is that the newspaper you were just discussing? Yeah. Do you see your signature on there? Yeah. Do you see Mr. Cox's signature and the spelling of his name? Yeah. Is that accurate as to what you signed in the jail with these men? We offer 489. No objection. No objection. What's the relevance, Your Honor? I didn't hear what you said. Objection. Ladies and gentlemen, 489 is not offered for the truth of the information in the news article, and you should not consider it for the truth of what's written in the news article in the exhibit. Otherwise, the exhibit may be admitted. And that is, what's the number again? 489, Your Honor. 489 may be admitted. Scrocky, if you could publish that actually, Your Honor, what we did is we redacted the newsprint concerning the article. Oh, okay. The two causing trouble in Salcha could be hearsay, but yeah, we'll have that as it is, Mr. Scrocky. Mr. Anderson, do you see the photo that we put up on the screen for you, sir? Affirmative. Where is your signature? Directly above the rubber hose at the end of the gun. Underneath the 241 there. Affirmative. And Sean, if you could enlarge that for us, please. Do you see Mr. Cox's signature? Yes. Where do you see that? It's over on the left. That'd be your left. Oh, sorry. On the right. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. Above the zip tie. And there's Lex Rex. Yes. And this would be those signature there, Coleman's. We've got one left here on the left-hand side, Lonnie's. Do you know who Trinity and Coley are? Trinity. Where it says to Trinity and Coley from Schaefer Cox? No, I have no idea. When you signed it, who did you give this back to? Schaefer. Thank you. If we could have the lights, Madam Clerk. Mr. Anderson, you mentioned J.R. Olson. Yes. And you were contacted by him? Affirmative. How was the contact made? He called me. Do you recall about the approximate time frame of the call? I think it was February 13th, 2011. February 13th, and the phone call was about what? He wanted the database that I had started to put together. Did he tell you how the call came to be? He said Schaefer asked him to call. Okay, did you call Schaefer back with respect to the phone call? I called him back. You did? Yes. And what did he say? I said, yeah, JR is part of the militia, and I don't specifically remember if he said yes. He told JR to call, but then I just told Schaefer, well, I'd rather see you instead. What did he say to you in response to that, if you recall? Okay, had you had any opportunity to meet Mr. Olson before this phone call? No, I haven't met him to this day that I know of. So he just called you up and told you what you just told us? Affirmative. And after that phone call, did Mr. Cox make any contact with you about your database, as you're calling it? Yeah, on March the 7th. Okay, affirmative. Before we get to that, okay, between those two time frames, between Olson calling you and Mr. Cox on March 7th, did anybody else call you with respect to this list or this database? Oh, Karen called me. Objection, hearsay. Well, it's not hearsay as to who may have called him. The objection's overruled. Scrocky, did you get a phone call? Yeah. From who? Karen Vernon had called me. Okay. About the same topic? Objection. The objection's overruled. Scrocky, I assume so. So just asked if I had something for Schaefer. Did you give her anything? No, I got mad at her. Please tell the jury why you got mad at her and what did you say? She asked, did you have something for Schaefer? And I said, no, I don't. And he's starting to piss me off. And when I went into a rant about how I needed to get away from the sovereignty and redemption paperwork process that he was doing, that he had no public sanction anymore, I said he needed to go back to the Liberty Bell if he wanted to do that, but next time don't carry a gun with him. And then at the end of the phone call, she just said, the court, wait a minute. That's enough, I'm sorry. You ended the phone call after that. I don't want to say because of the rules. I don't want you to say what she said. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, don't say what she said. Scrocky. Although, Judge, Your Honor, he's already said what she said. The court, the objection's overruled. Scrocky. We would also view her statements as co-conspirator statements under 801D2. We'll have to talk about that. Scrocky, I think we can get through this, Scrocky. So you ended the phone call? Now we'll go to what you talked about before Mr. Cox called you, And around March 7th or so, well, he came, he didn't call me. I ended up calling him. Oh, I'm sorry, all right. Yeah, he came by on March the 7th. He came by my house. It was my first day at my new job, and he came by my house, left a phone number and a note asking me to call the phone number from an untapped phone line. From an untapped phone line, affirmative. Were you at home when he was visiting, or what was the circumstances? No, I was at work. You were at work. It was my first day at my new job. All right, and did he give you a number for this untapped phone number? Yeah, so I drove up there. It's called Hilltop Truck Stop. It's a gas station about 7 miles from my place, and I called from there, and we had conversation for about 20 minutes or so. About what? Well, he talked a little bit about the court paperwork, and it just became kind of generalized discussion, He was talking about his trouble with the courts. I remember telling him that everyone who does that sovereignty stuff ends up going to jail. I didn't know, I didn't think he didn't have the public following that he did before, If he wanted, he could go back. He ought to go back and do the Liberty Bell. I talked to him a little bit about, he didn't prompt me to say this. He didn't say anything to prompt me to say this. I just felt like I wanted to say it. I talked to him about the importance of being nonviolent, and then we talked a little bit about how he just wanted to work for a while, save up, get a bunch of money, and if the economy collapses, I'll have gold and silver to buy a bunch of real estate or leave the country. And then at the end of the conversation, he said, do you have something for me? And I said, affirmative. What was his status at the time you had this meeting with him? His status, affirmative. I guess I don't understand. Well, do you have an understanding about whether he was, on the run? All right. Yeah, he was on the lam at that point from his misdemeanor. Your understanding about that was what, Mr. Anderson? He had skipped his court date for a Class B misdemeanor weapons case, and the judge had ordered a bond or ordered, a $7,500 bond on him for failure to appear when he skipped his court date. Was this meeting that you just spoke about between the two of you, anybody else there? Well, this was a phone call I just spoke about. I'm sorry. Okay, a phone call, yeah. Then next, we met in a town. Let me back up. Affirmative. The reason that did you make a call from the place you just spoke of? Yes, I made the call. From where? Hilltop Truck Stop. It's a gas station and cafe about 8 Mile Elliott Highway. Was this the untapped phone? Yeah, I see. So you made the phone call. Did you have occasion to see Mr. Cox after that? Yeah, I asked him to meet me in the town. And did that happen? Yeah. Where did you meet up with him? At one of my friend's house? Did he show up for a meeting? Yeah, Schaefer Cox showed up. And who was with him? Coleman was with him. What did you talk about during this meeting? I just realized we're at noon now. We are? The court. Let's come back to about 1 o'clock, folks. We're going to take a short lunch hour today, shorter than usual, so be back ready to go at 1. In the meantime, follow all my instructions about recess, and you be back at 1 o'clock too, Mr. Anderson. Yes, sir. The court, you can step down now, Mr. Anderson. Okay, what did Miss Vernon say on the phone? Scrocky, I think she said thank you and hung up. I think that would be the next statement, that's okay. But the statement that I'm objecting to, Your Honor, is, do you have something for Schaefer? And I don't think the government has laid the proper foundation to show that she's unindicted co-conspiracy in count number 12 of the indictment, which is what the statement goes to. Mr. Scrocky, we're allowed to, as the court knows, under Burgeli, to tie this up. And we've got video and audio of her purchasing grenades and silenced weapons. Miss Hayden, that's count 1. The court, I don't see that as a statement of fact in any event, and that would bring it under the hearsay rule. All rise. This matter is in recess until 1 p.m. All rise. His Honor, the court. His This United States District Court is again in session. Please be seated. All right, ready to go. Bring in the jury, please. Whoops. The court. While monkeying around with something else during the noon hour, I figured out that I have held court in state and federal in 36 different cities. So what do I get for that? Scrocky miles. The court, nothing. Clapping. An airline vomit bag. Okay, you may be seated. Please continue where you're seated. Where's our witness? We're advised the witness is here, but his lawyer is not. Mr. Dooley, I just saw him. He'll come. Scrocky, I'm sure he'll come. The court, is this like a momentary delay or what? I'll go look. The court, I should have let you continue. Recess. Here we go. Okay, you may continue. Mr. Anderson, you're still under oath. Affirmative. All right. I believe I asked you earlier on that you had testified before federal grand jury. Yeah. Do you recall about when that was? December 9th, I think 2011. And after your arrest back in March of 2011, were you interviewed? Yes. And you agreed to talk to the law enforcement? Affirmative. Do you recall who was there during that interview? Sandy Klein and Meredith, I think. And Miss Klein was with who? Do you recall? FBI, I think. And Miss Meredith, I believe it was FFPD, Fairbanks Police. Could you tell the jury with respect to what you told them in terms of a range of truthfulness, how you came out with respect to yourself on that range? Oh, I was probably 80-85% truthful. You held a few things back? Affirmative. What did you hold back? I'd say a significant part was when I stated the information was never to be used for any nonviolent purpose. You know, truth-wise, it was for a defensive violent purpose in the future, if it ever came to be. And I stated that I had never worked on it, and that wasn't true. Before we broke lunch, Mr. Anderson, you were speaking about a meeting between yourself and Mr. Cox. And Mr. Barney was in attendance as well. And where did that meeting occur? At my friend's house, whom I house sit for occasionally. And if you could just revisit how briefly, you know, how, affirmative, that meeting came to be. Briefly, March 7th, Schaefer came by my house while I was at work, left a note with my wife with a phone number to call. I got home that evening. I drove into town, toward town, called the phone number from the gas station along the way. I let him know I was coming in and I wanted to see him, and then I continued on my way into town. Did you, between the two of you, between yourself and Mr. Cox, who arranged for the location of the meeting? I did. And when he showed up, you said Mr. Barney was with him? Yeah, Coleman drove him. Okay, and do you recall about when this meeting occurred? What time of the evening? On what day approximately? That was March 7th in the evening. And when he was coming in your mind, he was coming in for what reason? I thought it was coming for the database, but by that time I had already gotten rid of it, and I was just trying to lure him in to talk to him. When you say lure him in to talk to him about what? What do you mean by that? I know, well, that was the first time I had been able to get a hold of him for 3 weeks. I had been trying to get a hold of him, and I couldn't, and I finally had contact, and I wanted to see him. So, cough, sorry, I gave him a perceived reason to meet with me to make sure that he would be able to. What was the perceived reason that you gave him? Obtaining the database that I had. Well, that I had no longer. Okay, you mentioned you had it in no longer? Affirmative. Could you tell the jury, you know, what you did with it? I downloaded a program off the internet for wiping hard drives, and I used it to wipe all the information. How many hard drives are we talking about here, Mr. Anderson? I only did that to one. Okay, so you downloaded a program and you wiped it clean? Affirmative. When did you do that? When? Immediately after J.R. Olson had called me within a day or so. Explain to the jury why you did that after being contacted by Mr. Olson. 2 reasons. One, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what Schaefer was planning, and if he was planning, and also if there was something going on, I didn't want to be implicated in it. Is that why you called him? Yeah, well, it was to find out what was going on. That's why I wanted to see him. Okay, so you got the forensic or some sort of a software, affirmative, hardware, hard drive, cleansing program, yeah. Do you recall the name of it? I think it was Eraser. Okay, and so what did you do with that program? I used it to wipe the hard drive. What else did you do to the hard drive? Later on, I smashed it with a hammer. Tell the jury what you did. I put it on a concrete floor, took a hammer and smashed it until little parts of it fell out. Did you collect that? What was left of the hard drive? I threw it in the trash. On this meeting in March, on March 7th with Mr. Cox and Mr. Barney, what did Affirmative. You tell Mr. Cox with respect to this. At the very end of the meeting, I just said, oh, by the way, I destroyed that thing. And did you observe the reaction of Mr. Cox's part? He didn't say anything. His only reaction was like just kind of a facial surprise. Those are all the questions I have for Mr. Anderson. Mr. DeVerso, can you pull that microphone just a little bit closer? Thank you. Cross-examination by Mr. Traverso. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. May I call you Michael instead of Mr. Anderson? That's fine. All right, thanks. When you were in jail, I know you've been through a long ordeal, Michael, but I do have to go back in time here, okay? Okay. All right, when you were in jail, you felt that you hadn't done anything wrong. You couldn't understand why you were in jail, correct? Affirmative. And when you were going through the distress that you were going through, you met up with Schaefer in the gym and in church, correct? Affirmative. And was he supportive or was he belligerent to you or what? No, he was great. Okay, Cox was one of the reasons I got through it. Affirmative. Okay, when you met with Schaefer, I call him Schaefer instead of Francis Schaefer. You call him Schaefer too, right? Yeah. Okay, so for the sake of the record, I'm just going to call him Schaefer. Okay, but when...
This is Global Tel. Your call may be monitored or recorded. I have a prepaid call from Sean Staff, an inmate in Blackwater River Correctional Facility. Your balance is $38.70. To hear the maximum cost of this call, press 9. If you wish to accept this prepaid call, dial 0 now. To refuse this call, hang up. To block inmate calls, dial 7.
Okay, so for the record, I'm just going to call him Schaefer. Okay, but when you Schaefer met a long time ago, and I'm assuming it's back in 2008, 2009, or is it right in 2008? Okay, 2008, I would say. Okay, you guys had a lot of intellectual discussions about your political beliefs, yes, correct, and the political beliefs were different than his, but some were in similar veins, right? A lot of similarities, yes. Okay, Schaefer ever talk about Gandhi? Yeah. And did he ever, that he didn't believe in violence? Yeah, we had those discussions. Okay, and you don't believe in violence, correct? Correct. I have my moments of failing, but there was a period where you were angry. You said just before you were arrested. Affirmative. On February 2010, I believe. I had gotten over my anger probably 6 months prior to that. Okay, they had something to do. That have something to do with your political beliefs, or did it have something to do with just the police? What did it have to do with more than just the encounters I had with law enforcement? Yeah, and encounters I heard about others having. Okay, well, and you and Schaefer were discussing your political beliefs. Schaefer and did he ever discuss with you that he believed that we should and that he should and that he should belong to an organization, or that people should get together and overthrow the government for the purposes of overthrowing the government? Yes, no. That he should belong to an organization, or that people should get together and overthrow the government for the purpose of overthrowing the government? Yeah. No. Okay, what was your belief? That was when he discussed politics with you. What was your political vein at the time? At the time, I would have called myself a constitutionalist. I believe that the government had grown too powerful, and at some point it would, due to its own corruption, it would collapse upon itself. Okay, and that we wait for the time should try to rebuild. Okay, and Schaefer believed the same, yes. Okay, somewhere along the line, I think I reviewed materials and said that you were an anarchist or something. Is that true? It's partially true. I would consider myself what's called an anarcho-capitalist, and the premise behind that is philosophy that no person or group of persons has the right to instill violence upon another person or a group of people, and I consider government and most of its actions to be violent, and therefore I cannot support the government as it exists today. However, since subscribe to the system of nonviolence, the idea of using violence to take down government, I'm opposed to. Okay, when you got to know Schaefer a little more, and he was involved in the Second Amendment Task Force, the Alaska Peacemakers Militia and the Liberty Bell, did he ever espouse killing anybody to overthrow the government? I never heard him say that specifically, no. Did he ever talk to you about when the government collapsed, there might be a need to have a time to protect oneself against deadly force? Yes, we talked about that. And as you said, it could be anybody, it could be government, or it could be during a time of martial law. Is that what you were talking about earlier, right? And that's when people would there's just no control out in the streets, basically, right? Okay, when you say 85% of your interview with Detective Meredith from the Fairbanks Police Department and FBI Special Agent Sandra Klein, or Sandy Klein, was not true, you were truthful of at least 80% of the time. Is that right? Is that what you're saying? It's a guesstimate. Okay, at that time, are you saying that just generally you were lying about different things? Was what was truthful and what was not truthful? Well, the primary things that weren't truthful what I just stated a few minutes ago. I was trying to figure out what was going on. That's why I was talking. Okay, Schaefer kind of had an unusual philosophy and about the advocacy in the Second Amendment Task Force, Alaska Peacemaker Militia, and Liberty Bell. But he would actually engage the other side, correct? Yes. In fact, he would go to the police officer's home if he had a dispute with him, right? He had done that. Yes. In fact, when you testified, I would assume that when you testified at grand jury, you were 100% truthful, correct? To the best of my ability, yes. And when you testified at the grand jury, you stated that Schaefer at one time had a dispute with a trooper, and he went there and he talked with him for 3 hours. Is that correct? Yes. He didn't go there with a machine gun or a bunch of weaponry or hundreds of rounds of clips and stuff, did he? Scrocky, objection, foundation, speculation. He wasn't there. Court sustained. Okay. Were you there when he would engage the other? Were you aware that he would engage the other side? Yes. Are you aware of whether or not he would take armament with him? Same objection. No, I'm asking. And it's if he knows. Vague question. Well, the objection is sustained. There needs to be a foundation. Traverso. Did you know when there was a time that you, Schaefer Cox, affirmative, and some other people from the Second Amendment Task Force talked to an ATF agent? Yes. And that was at the federal building? Yes. Did Schaefer take a gun in that building? Objection, foundation. He was with him. Well, it could have been concealed. Let me ask you this. Did you go through security? Yeah. Was there two forms of security there, kind of like here, X-ray and metal detector? Yeah, well, security downstairs, you walk into a court building, and the security upstairs, you walk through the marshals. You go through the marshals. Oh, yeah. Did any guns or any other weaponry get revealed during the course of interaction with those the conveyor belt and the security people? Not that I'm aware of. Okay, you weren't packing anything, right? No. And as far as you know, Schaefer wasn't. Not that I'm aware of. All right, you went to the ATF agent, right? Affirmative. And what was the purpose of that meeting? What was the reason for engaging the ATF agent? Schaefer was delivering a document that he had written up a bunch of people and had signed, espousing the right to bear arms as well as defending our other rights. Okay, and did the object of homemade weapons come up? Objection, hearsay. Traverso, I said, did the subject of homemade weapons come up? The objection's overruled. You can answer the question. During the meeting with the ATF, yes. I don't remember the subject coming up. All I remember is the ATF agent making a statement that he was only concerned with interstate commerce or something. He was only concerned with interstate commerce weapons that travel through the interstate commerce. Objection. Could you clarify? That is hearsay. It's hearsay. He has no idea what this agent was talking about in terms of interstate commerce or that capacity. He can testify as to what he heard by Mr. Traverso. We got an emergency alert, weather alert.
Flash floods.
Okay. I got to finish this reading. He can testify that's what he heard. That'll fill the pull-up. That's a good thing. Just what the only ATF agent north of Cantwell, and he was interested in weapons that travel in interstate commerce. He can't busy himself with other stuff. Okay. Was kind of all right. Thank you. Now I want to go back in time. You testified earlier about grenade shells. You described that they were on the tactical vest. From at some point, as I recall your grand jury testimony, you called it grenade souvenirs. Is that correct? I think I said that. Yeah. Okay. Now, when you transported the rifles and the armament that Schaefer from his house to your place, wasn't there an attorney present? Yes. One was present at Schaefer's door and greeted me. Was his name Robert John? Yeah. Do you have an association with Aaron Bennett? Yes. Can you describe what that is? It's a. Got to be kidding me, man. What's this? I can't put it on pause. Hold on. I gotta pause it. Hello?
This is an important message from the Office of Emergency Management, Emergency Notification System. Please listen to the entire message and wait for the instructions at the end to confirm receipt of the message. Thank you.
There's severe weather in the area. Winds up to 60 miles per hour and up to tennis ball size hail. This warning will continue until 10 p.m.
Press 1 to confirm receipt. Press 2 to replay this message. Thank you. Your response has been received. Goodbye.
What a man. You can't get anything done around here without the government calling you and telling you it's bad weather, and all you gotta do is look out the window. All right. Yes, okay. Can you describe what that is? It's a friendship, not a real good friends, but okay, do you belong to any other group that Aaron Bennett led? Some sort of, I don't know if it's a militia group or a group of militias. I attended a couple of outings that he had. Okay, are those training exercises? Kind of basically, we'd go and play airsoft. Did it come to your attention that Schaefer was afraid of Aaron Bennett at some point? I knew that they didn't like each other. Okay, now I don't know that he was afraid of him per se. Well, was Aaron Bennett very critical of the way Schaefer conducted his militia business or activities? Yeah. Schaefer never wanted the militia to be, do you know the motto of the militia? Of Schaefer's? Yes. Defend all, aggress none? Yes. And that was the counter to what Mr. Bennett would want. Scrocky, objection calls for speculation. Traverso, he has an association with Mr. Bennett. I think he will. Wait a moment. He went to a couple of outings. Well, I can rephrase the question, Your Honor. Rephrase the question. Traverso, was there a strong disagreement as to how militias should be run? One maybe was more pro-violent and the other was against violence. I can't say that. Okay, I mean, the times that I spoke to Aaron Bennett, you know, I talked to him about the importance of being nonviolent. You tried to guide Mr. Bennett about that, being nonviolent. Yeah. Okay, but Mr. Fulton, you had no dealings with that day other than what you heard that one day and what you saw. Yeah. No, I never had any dealings with him, and that was around June perhaps of 2010. That event, I think it was late July or early August. Okay, was that at Blondie's or was it otherwise known as Far North Tactical? It used to be called Blondie's, correct? Yes. Okay, and how many people do you think were there? 10 or so, maybe dozen people coming and going, most of just staying in. Okay, well, the Fulton was frustrated with Schaefer about affirmative, not having a plan. And he had $30,000. He had $30,000 spent. Did he say anything else about having his assets coming up here? Yeah, that's what he said. He had spent $30,000 bringing men and equipment up, and they were on the right way now. Okay, he just wanted to promote basically some sort of confrontation with authorities, right? Objection, foundation, and speculation. He doesn't know that Mr. Fulton's thinking, hey, babe, I stopped those notifications, so don't even worry about it anymore. It's not affecting me. All right. He doesn't know what Mr. Fulton's thinking. Well, what was understanding of what was going on, Scrocky? Can we have a roll and wait? I'm sorry. As far as the promotion, wait a minute. Let me rule on when there's an objection. I'm sorry. Can we testify as to what observed and what he heard? Okay. Not what was in somebody else's mind, right? Traverso, what did you hear on the day that they were raising the fundraiser? I guess that's what they called it. What did you hear about some sort of engagement by Mr. Fulton? Fulton said that he was bringing men and equipment up and he had spent $30,000 on it and he wanted to go ahead with some plan. Okay, and he was looking for a plan. Okay, now just so I can get a couple of names straight here, what would Trooper's name that you mentioned before, Malik Jones rather than Malik? I don't know what the correct pronunciation is. Okay, and Gary Tellep, or was it Gary Tollep, or again, I don't know I don't know the pronunciation is. You don't know of that? Oh, you don't know. Okay. Now those names that showed up at the exhibits, the little notes that you took, yeah, were any of that information on the database? The only one I remember looking up ever was Ron Wall when Schaefer wanted to go speak to him. Okay, I mean specifically remember. So okay, did Schaefer ever ask you for a name and say, I'm gonna go shoot that person, so give me his address? He never said that. Okay, was that part of the philosophy that he expressed? You know, you engage the other side as much as you can. That's what he espoused. Okay, all right. That's what he espoused to me. Okay, thank you. And when you got your information off these websites, you said DNR websites. Affirmative. Would you transfer that information onto your database, or was this information that you would write notes on? Typically, I just saved it. Okay, save the web page. Did you ever enter Trina Bootcamp's name in the database? No. Did you ever enter Trooper Barrick's name in the database? I don't remember. Did you enter Ron Wall's name in the database? I think I saved him. Okay, how about Gary Tellep? I don't remember. Now, as to you said earlier that you saw a name in the newspaper about a marshal, correct? Affirmative. And his name was Johnson, Jimmy Johnson. Okay, Schaefer never asked anything about Jimmy Johnson, did he? No. And when you were being interviewed by Mr. Klein about Mr. Meredith, you stated that you didn't engage in any kind of surveillance, correct? That I did not. Yes, that's what I stated. Is it true? Is that a lie? Well, that what I did, I can state that I did, and let the definition of surveillance be hashed out. Okay, I'd rather do that. Well, you actually, what you said is, you took a picture of license plates. I took one picture of one license plate, and that was the only picture I took in anything related in this case that I remember. Okay, I looked up some stuff up on a public information. Okay, and what was it? Okay, and did you give that information to Schaefer afterwards? No. Okay, you did not have you have been listed as you have engaged, as far as you know, in any conduct that you believe wasn't whose object, the object being to commit a crime, that you agreed with Schaefer to commit a crime. Did you do that? Not that I'm aware of. Okay, now you had another lawyer in the beginning by the name of Lori Bodwell, correct? Yes. You have actually had several attorneys, correct? Affirmative. Okay, your first lawyer was Lori Bodwell, and she worked for the state, right? Yeah. And did it come to your attention that the FBI and maybe another person, an attorney from the U.S. Attorney's Office, had gone to speak to Miss Bodwell about you? Let's see. I don't know if. Well, let me ask. The question this way: did it come to your attention that Miss Bodwell was seeking your cooperation with the federal government. Is it okay to discuss conversations with my former attorney? Is what I'm wondering. Scrocky, he's got a lawyer here in the room. Hertz, I guess I'd like to talk about that now with the court. You can, my client. Confer with your client if you want. Can we go outside the courtroom? Pardon me? Can we go outside the courtroom, Your Honor? I'd like to consult with my client privately if necessary, and it's probably appropriate to do so if he has a question about it. You can be excused for that purpose. Make it quick as you can, okay? And you can take a walk as we do this, not just to the jury room. Don't walk away. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson. You can be the excused. I want to talk to you about another thing anyway before the end of the day. The marshals have an issue on the 30th of May, and everybody and their brother is going to be in town for, the induction of your new circuit judge. And I've discussed with them the issues that are planned to recess at 1 o'clock at 30th. That means no lunch hour. We'll go straight through 8, not straight through with a couple of breaks, but 8:30 to 1, and then the quit for the day, and we'll make up the last part of the afternoon. There's going to be a short week anyway, but that's made necessary by the circumstances. Let's talk about time for a minute too. Here, how are we doing? Gained any? Scrocky, yeah, I think we have, Judge, and we're working on that, trying to speed things up, and we're also looking at our witnesses list to see if we can slice a few things off. Okay, so we're trying to move it. Yeah, okay, I think it's appropriate to give the time to confer. I hate recess too firmly, and I guess we might as well, and let me know as soon as they're ready. All right, the matter stands in brief recess. Okay, the clerk, all rise. This court is again in session. Please be seated. Okay, you can bring the jury back. I assume we're going to assert privilege as to communications between Mr. Anderson's state-appointed counsel and Mr. Anderson. We don't believe there should be any inquiry into what Ms. Bodwell told him and what advice she gave him and what he said in response to any of that advice. Okay, I don't believe, preclude me asking the question, Your Honor. I can get this squared away now because I don't want objections. I think he can express his reaction to, well, whether or not, I've got to hear the questions, but it's not appropriate if you know that the privilege is going to be asserted. It's not appropriate to ask him questions that require him to publicly assert the privilege, I think. Okay, but I can ask him the question whether or not he felt a pressure to cooperate with the federal government. I think that has nothing to do with attorney-client communications. That's how he felt, not what was communicated to him. Okay, thank you. Bring in the jury. It reminds me of a case in 1965 where I represented a witness who chose to stand on her privilege against self-incrimination. Very interesting day in court. The court, you may be seated. Let's proceed. Michael, Do you feel pressure to cooperate with the federal government? At that time, I felt some. Do you feel some pressure through your attorney? Objection, Your Honor. Hertz, inaudible. Traversal, that's not what I'm... Scrocky, this is exactly, court, what we talked about. The objection is sustained by Mr. Traversal. Did you, the pressure that you were feeling, was that because there was an effort to have you as a witness against Francis Schaefer Cox? Objection, it comes from counsel. We need to know where the foundation of this information comes from. The objection is sustained. Traversal, okay. What kind of pressure were you feeling? It was, I couldn't really put a finger on it. It was just kind of general. They were wanting me to say something that could be used to be incriminating, I suppose. Okay, but I didn't know from whom. Okay, it was kind of paranoia. Okay, all right. Now, earlier I asked you whether or not you could go back a little bit, Michael. I asked you some about whether or not you knew if Aaron Bennett had a strong dislike or if had a dislike of Schaefer. And you mentioned earlier that they had espoused different views, correct? Yeah, they espoused some different views. And you had you concerned about information that Schaefer had some sort of plan through Aaron Bennett, correct? And Aaron Bennett told me that he had received information or heard it secondhand from Bill Fulton. Okay, but you were aware of something up in the works even after Schaefer had come back from not Schaefer, but after the militia conference in February 2011, correct? In early February of 2011, do you mean 2011? Sorry, okay. What I was told was that Bennett stated that objection calls for hearsay answer sustained. Can you not talk about what someone else said and what your understanding was of what was going on? I was simply told that Schaefer was up to something. Scrocky, objection, it's still hearsay answer. No, just what you understood. Did you have any personal information about Schaefer having some sort of plan? I did not. Okay, good. Now, earlier, as well as I failed to mention about your database, did you have Tom Stadler's name on there too? Stadler was his name? I don't remember that. Did you? I don't remember that name. Stadler. Oh, the DHS person. No, I never looked him up. Okay, I don't remember. Nanette Curtis. No. Okay, thank you. And the police officer that you mentioned earlier, Mr. Marion, was he in the database? I think I saved his information when I looked it up for myself. Okay, that was for the situation that you had with him, right? No, yeah, I just wanted to leave a nasty note in his mailbox. Okay, I have no further questions. Michael, thank you, Mr. Dooley. Mr. Dooley. Mr. Anderson, I am Tim Dooley representing Coleman Barney. Hi, I want to focus on Coleman Barney. I want you to focus on Coleman Barney. Okay. When you were at Blondie's Gun Shop, also known as Far North Tactical, owned by Aaron Bennett, yes, Coleman Barney was not there, correct? No, he was not. You had very limited contacts with Coleman Barney? Correct. One contact, I think, was you called him on the phone, to talk about food storage. Yes, I was. I had just recently started selling storable food on multi-level marketing program, kind of like an Amway program, and he was interested in buying some from me from his church ward. Okay, and it was the extent of that conversation. Yes, you had not met him at the time, correct? No. You had never heard Coleman Barney ask for information about any person? No. He never asked you to maintain a list or a database? No. And you're saying no in agreement with me? I'm agreeing with you. All right, thank you. And you said you went to the meetings of the Alaska Peacemaker Militia. At those two meetings, Coleman Barney was not there, correct? The very first one, no, and the second one, I just don't remember. All right, fair enough. Now, it must have been very difficult for you to be arrested on March the 10th. Affirmative. You were put in this hole for 60 days, correct? 30 days, 30 days. All right, and your wife from Russia, correct? And you could not hug her or kiss her or anything, correct? Your Honor, is this relevant? This is relevant? From Scrocky? No, I don't. No, it's very relevant. The court overruled. Duly. Correct. Okay. You had not received any documentation to speak of about the charges against you, correct? Not for several days. Then after 30 days, I gather in the hole, affirmative, you were released to what's called general population, yes? And there you discovered there's really criminals in the jail, correct? Affirmative. You yourself have never committed a crime in the past, or at least not on the record anyway, correct? Correct. All right, now after your wife was very unhappy with you being in jail, correct? Right, yes, correct. All right, eventually you're released. You must have celebrated, affirmative. But later on you learned that the federal government wanted to speak with you, correct? Affirmative, yeah. And you were willing to do that, correct? Yes. And one day a group of men came to the house where you were staying, correct? Affirmative. And you had told people you were staying, correct? People knew. Okay, but suddenly a large number of men, federal agents, basically swarmed the house. Affirmative. And they had the helmet and the bulletproof vest and the whole Darth Vader kind of thing, right? Yeah. Guns drawn? No, I don't remember the guns being drawn, but all right. And they reasonable, arrested you. He's not done with his answer, Dooley. Oh, I was just saying they were reasonable with me. Okay, they were nice, all right. Nice federal agents, sort of, and they arrested you, yeah? And what did you feel like when that happened? I was a little angry. Why? Because I just getting fed up with the whole darn thing. They transported you to Anchorage? No, Fairbanks. No, just Fairbanks jail. And what did they tell you about why you were arrested? They said no charges and I had immunity to speak to the grand jury. Okay, in your mind you had done nothing wrong, correct? Correct. Except to get on their radar scope, correct? Right? Excuse me, counsel, was this the second arrest on the material witness warrant? Yeah, all right. Mr. Dooley, did they tell you if you did not cooperate you would be charged? They didn't say that. They just said if I told the truth I would not be charged. All right, okay, and you would not be charged with conspiracy to murder, correct? All right. But I didn't know there were even in existence at that point on the federal side while you were in prison in Fairbanks. Affirmative. Was Coleman Barney honorable to you in his dealings? Yes. Honest with you in his dealings? As far as I can tell, was he helpful or hurtful to you? Helpful. All right, I understand that you save money by getting hard drives out of dumpsters and the like. Is that correct? I get everything out of dumpsters. All right. 90% of my wardrobe comes from the dump. Okay, same here. And occasionally you found some very distasteful things on those hard drives, correct? No, I didn't, but go ahead. No, go ahead. You were about to finish. I would say most, all but I think none. One of those, no, two of those hard drives I never looked at, and the two that I did, I had reformatted on my purposes, for my own purposes. Okay, all right. You had stuff seized. It's still held, and you don't have it back. I understand. I have some of my paperwork back, but other stuff I don't have. All right, Mr. Dooley. That's all I have for you, Mr. Anderson. Good luck. The witness, thank you. Miss Hayden, good afternoon, Mr. Anderson. Good afternoon. Mr. Anderson, I represent Lonnie Vernon. It's my understanding that you rarely had contact with Mr. Vernon. Is that correct? Correct. Maybe a couple times a year, and then it's at a social events, correct? Now, the meeting that you talked about Far North Tactical between Aaron Bennett and Bill Fulton and Mr. Cox, affirmative. Lonnie Vernon wasn't there, was he? No. And as far as you know, Lonnie Vernon never participated in the Liberty Bell, not that I'm aware of. Never answered a call? Correct. Not that I'm aware of. Okay. I'd like for you to take a quick look at what's been marked at Government Exhibit 536. It'll come up on your monitor. If Madam Clerk can help with the lights. This is a letter on an email describe what Mr. Cox would different individuals to do so as far as the Alaska Peacemakers Militia. Is that fair to describe it like that? Yeah. And Lonnie Vernon's name was not on there, is it? I don't see it. Thank you, Miss Hayden. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now let's take a little bit about some of the names that we've been discussing, and my pronunciation of them is not going to be any better than yours. Gary Tellep. Okay, he's the state officer, right? Alaska State Trooper. Okay, Ron Wall, Alaska State Trooper, Barak, Alaska State Trooper, right? Correct. And Malik Jones, again, Alaska State Troopers, correct. All state employees, Now, we saw a piece of paper where you had written down Jimmy Johnson's name, who, affirmative. And is your understanding of federal U.S. Marshal? Yes. Okay, and that was something that you did on your own? Nobody asked you to do that? No. Certainly Lonnie Vernon didn't ask you to do that? Okay, and you wrote it. You saw it on the newspaper. I'm sorry, you saw it, Googled it, and an article, and it didn't, and it came up the article that it wasn't in the newspaper. You wrote it down? Affirmative. In your weatherproof book, right? Correct. Affirmative. And then you put it away and never looked at it again, correct? And you never passed it on to anybody, correct? Now, during this period of time when you're working on the database, I believe we looked at an exhibit, I believe it was 504, but you don't need to pull it up. I think you can recall it. It's the one that has the drawing of the federal courthouse parking lot, and there was a notation up there with Vernon's phone number on it, yes, but you never called him, no. Okay, there was a notation, get paperwork from the Vernons, but you never asked them for any paperwork, no. And they never gave you any paperwork, no, but I don't remember what it's about. Okay, Lonnie Vernon never asked you to look up any names, no. Lonnie Vernon never came to your house, no. He never knocked on your door, no. He never called you, negative. And he never asked anything about this database, no. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. Redirect examination by Scrocky. Is it okay if I call you Mr. Anderson? Yeah. Sir, you were just asked, I'm going to work on my way backwards, I guess. You were asked questions by Miss Hayden and about Lonnie Vernon coming to your house, affirmative, and asking you for certain things. And they were asked some questions about Mr. Dooley about whether you had any engagement with Mr. Barney, right? Affirmative. And do you have any idea about any meeting with Mr. Barney, Cox, and Vernon? You have any idea about how many meetings Barney, Cox, and Vernon may have had in 2010, 2011 together? I don't know. No idea at all. No idea. Do you know that there were undercover recordings made in this investigation? I'm aware of that. You are aware of that, right? Yes, a lot of them, right? Yes. Have you heard of any of those conversations, sir? Objection, Your Honor. This is a reopening redirect. It sounds like it is. Scrocky, with respect to those meetings, you didn't attend those meetings, correct? No, I didn't. Anybody relate to you the content of what was talked about in those meetings? In jail, Schaefer indicated what was talked about during the meetings, and what was that? Objection, Your Honor, as far as it's reopening direct, Your Honor, again. Okay, I'll move on. Okay. With respect to your database, you were asked a lot of questions about state employees. How many people were on that database? Oh, I'd guess around 15, 20, maybe 20. And from various areas, I think a few troopers, a few Fairbanks police, and one OCS worker that I remember. It sounds to me like 5. There were more than that? Well, no, a few from each. Well, a few from the police, a few from the troopers. I'm thinking of 15, 20. I'm just kind of guessing, but I know I didn't count them. Okay, and the names came from, that'd be about right. Those names came from Mr. Cox. A few of them, affirmative. Okay, Mr. Diverso asked you a number of questions about Mr. Cox's engagement with the other side. Okay, do you recall those questions? Yes. And then I guess the word Gandhi was mentioned too. Yes. As part of your philosophical discussions, affirmative. You testified on direct that Mr. Cox made a testament to a state court judge. Yes. And that you heard, what was that statement? Let's see. I have some troopers outnumbered and outgunned and can have them all dead in one night, but we don't want that. We want peace. It may not be word for word, but that's affirmative, the best I can remember. With respect to some of these statements about Gandhi, we want peace. Did you ever, Mr. Cox, tell people that he knew where they lived? I don't think so, unless he stated it in the courtroom that day. How about anything else with respect to, did he ever tell you anything else about what he told police with respect to how peaceful he would have been? With following the event, you mean, or yeah? No, I really didn't see much after that. I think I saw him once, and then the last meeting that we had. In fact, it's pretty fair to say you didn't see him very much at all, isn't it? I didn't see him much at all, no. Okay, Scrocky, thank you, Mr. Anderson, the witness, thank you. You may be excused, Mr. Anderson, thank you. The witness, thank you. That's the end. Hey, babe, did you want to say something about me reading this testimony of Michael Anderson, which was a guy who simply took names down, which is no big deal. People Google things and put things in a name place all the time. People,
Since when is it illegal to have a phone book or contact list when you're working in politics? I mean, 90% of adults have a phone book, and I didn't think that was illegal.
right? That's a good point. He was a very political man. He ran for office, got nearly 40% of the vote in a three-way race, and he was a political man. So the fact that he has somebody taking names down doesn't mean that he's got a conspiracy to murder him. That's a huge, huge exaggeration, and he's obviously being set up. This guy, Michael, has testified over and over again that he wanted to be peaceful and that he actually had a dispute with a trooper. And guess what he did? He went and talked to the trooper for 3 hours. He didn't go take a gun to his house. So they're trying to make Schaefer out to be something that he's not, and it's very, very obvious. But let's go ahead and get this uploaded. I'm going to continue to work our way through the transcript just so I can understand it and see how they...
It sounded like that poor Anderson guy was totally intimidated.
Yeah. A lot of people can't take the pressure from the government once it comes full force, and people in FBI suits with guns and Darth Vader looking uniforms on, SWAT team, and they're very intimidated. And it sounded like he even tried to commit suicide when they put him in isolation for 30 days. Imagine being in isolation for 30 freaking days. I mean, that's insanity. That's just goes to show you how evil our government is. This whole case is just nothing but a representation of evil government.